Hello, hello, and welcome back, everyone, for this. This is going to be the last workshop of the year. Before we get into that first, though, this is also the club's AGM. Um, some of you might be wondering, what's that? And the answer is, it's a lot of paperwork and bureaucracy. Our club is well organized. We try to do a good job of running it. We get people telling us that we seem really organized and that things are really in line, and that's because we do a lot of work in the background, and this is part of it. So our club, as you may or may not know, is run using elections so that the people in charge are elected to that position as voted on by club members. But before we get to that part, and we will be getting to that part, I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to go over some of how the club went this year. Just some updates and information to let you guys know sort of what kind of things are going on in the background, because I'm sure you don't know, but there's a lot of work that goes into making all of this stuff. And we've been putting in a lot of time, and there's a lot of things that we can tell you about that you might not see day to day or in the Discord server. So let me just get my screen shared. It's going to give you a headache for a second as I share the StreamYard stream. There we go. All right. So first, I'm going to go into the membership for the club. Membership, as you know, there are sort of two tiers of membership. There's paid membership and then what we call full membership. This year, we ended up with 36 full members. Full members are people that have attended at least half of the workshops throughout the year. You might see at the beginning of our workshops, we always have an attendance link. We ask you to sign up because you need it for membership. That's because you have to attend half of those workshops to be a full voting member of the club. You also have to be a U of C student. So there are more people who would qualify, but they're not U of C students. So 36 is the number this year. We're a little disappointed with that because last year it was 52, so we're down a little bit. I think the reason for that is because when we designed this system, it was supposed to be everything was going to be in person, and with everything being recorded and online this year, it meant that people could watch the workshops whenever they wanted, and you couldn't sign the attendance form if you watched later in the week. So I suspect some people might have been watching later. You'll see numbers on the viewers that we've had. I suspect a lot of people were watching later and just didn't get to sign. But an exciting thing was we had 61 paid members this year. So paid membership, as you probably know, gets you access to our speaker series, which we'll talk a little bit more about. But we had 61 people that paid for membership. It was $10 for both semesters, and if you signed up after New Year's in the second semester, it was $5. And we had 61 people who paid and got access to those speaker series events, and also some of the extra stuff that we would do on weekends for just our premium members. So the bread and butter, I always say, of what we do is our workshops. This year we held 19 workshops in total. It was a big year because we did, for the first semester, we did a beginner and advanced streams. So we held 2 workshops a week, both at the same time. On Monday evenings. So there was a beginner stream and advanced stream. It was entirely online this year, something that the club was just never designed to do. We had to sort of come up with a way to do that last summer when COVID was becoming a long reality in everyone's lives. In total, for the attendance sheet, we had 97 unique U of C students that attended. Again, that's according to the attendance sheet. I can tell you there are more people than that. High school students and non-university students weren't signing the attendance sheet and were also at the workshop. So according to the attendance sheet, that graph you see on your right, that's the number of people that's how many people attended between 1 and 12 workshops. 12 was, I believe, the maximum number you could attend. We held 19 total, but some of them were held at the same time. So I think 6 people came to all 12 of the workshops. You can see there's a ton of people that only came to one, about, was it like 37, 38? That was because Dr. Henry, in his Intro to Information Security course, offered students in that class participation marks if they showed up to a meeting of the club. Most of them came to our first meeting and then, unfortunately, never really came back. A few of you, I think, are still here and hanging on, and thank you for sticking it out with us. It's good to see you guys still attending. So that's just a little bit on the workshops and the attendance. Topics covered. So we have a hard time remembering this, but about a year ago, the club was a couple of months old. Even the execs were brand new to all of this, and we were all learning it ourselves. And we decided to come up with a whole 2 semesters worth of workshops. We didn't know some of this stuff when we came up with that schedule. So on the left here, you can see these are the beginner streams that we had. Those were largely a repeat of the workshops we'd held last year when the club first started up for people that were brand new. And we did those so that people that were new to InfoSec could learn these things and get their feet wet without being tossed into the deep end of the pool. We were brand new, we knew what it was like, and we wanted people to have an entry into how this all works. But then we came up with these more we called them the experience stream or advanced stream. These are things that we all had to learn ourselves before making the workshops. And when we were doing this all last year, I also say, we really only knew CTFs. That was really our entry into information security, and that's really what we knew, and that's why all those beginner streams largely focus on CTF stuff. But you can see the experience stream starts to dig more into actual information security as it exists out in the industry. As the workshops go on, they start to focus more on tools and things that you might see out in the wild. I expect that next year, the workshops are going to look quite a bit different from just CTFs. They're going to be going way more into the stuff that we're learning now and going to be learning again over the summer. But that was a lot of topics we covered. This is stuff that all the executives that held these workshops had to learn and then teach to other people. They had to build workshops. Those workshops take about 40 hours each to build. So it's been a huge year for workshops. We decided on a big schedule, and it was a really big year. So thank you to all of those execs who came up with those, and thank you for all of you for coming to those workshops. Otherwise, it would have just been us teaching each other. We were happy with that, but we're always happy when more people are here to learn. So because you could attend the workshops after the Monday at 6 p.m. that we usually have, because you could watch them later on, we recorded everything. Viewership is suddenly a really big deal. This is what it feels like to be an old TV network when Netflix comes around. People can watch things later and on their own time. So I went and checked out the viewership numbers. On YouTube, we currently have 99 subscribers. If we get one more, we get to put, I believe, our own custom banner up on YouTube. I did an average of all the workshops that we have posted, and those workshops averaged 116 views per workshop video. So 116 people were watching or have watched, on average, those workshop videos over the year, which means that our sort of 36 full members, there's probably a lot more people that are actually attending and watching those videos later on. On Twitch, the number is much higher. We have 129 followers on Twitch, and we totaled 1,497 total views on all of our streams across Twitch. On the right is, I thought, a funny breakdown of where everyone was for those workshops. As you can see, mostly Canada and the United States, and then, of course, less than 1% from everything from Australia to Peru. And someone watched us in Azerbaijan, and thanks for coming. I can't imagine what the time difference must have been like. So now I'm going to bring Alex on, VP of the club, and she's going to talk about Magpie CTF.
Oh. I was just looking at the weird view of the stream. Anyways, my name's Alex. I was the chair of the CTF. Typically, our VPs are going to be chairing our CTFs throughout the years, and so I got the chance to chair the first ever Magpie CTF, which we're hoping to make annual. So it was a 48-hour competition. It was held February 19th, starting at 4 p.m. Mountain Standard Time to February 21st Mountain Standard Time. That was a Friday to a Sunday. We managed to create 40 unique challenges for it. This was all execs who were just creating their own. They were figuring out different ways that you could hack into files, make weird, insecure websites, weird, insecure software, and how you could actually solve a challenge with it. There was 8 total categories in those challenges, and we managed to get 4 sponsors for the CTF, which really helped us be able to create prizes and actually hold the CTF itself and pay for hosting.
It wants to play the video for us. There we go.
Our logo's an animation, so it wants to play. If you can just skip through this. This is just a brief timeline of when we started planning our CTF. So you can see it basically took a full year to start planning the CTF. We started February 27th, which was our first planning meeting. This was prior to COVID, and we really wanted it to be online and in person, but that obviously did not happen. So we made all these big plans, and then everything went... Oh, I'm super echoey. We made all these big plans, and then everything ended up being online. So then we had our first meeting, July 6, 2020, at the beginning of the summer when everything had wrapped up with school, just so we had the time. The rest of the summer was pretty much spent doing challenge development. And then as we got into the beginning of fall, we started developing a hosting stack. For those of you in computer science, especially at a university, you don't learn a lot about how code is actually deployed. You just learn how to code. So we had to entirely ourselves learn how code was deployed, which is something that's really big. You have to learn lots of different softwares. It's really interesting. One more, Jeremy. Don't overshoot and collapse. So we set our deadlines really early just because we didn't know if we were going to get to the CTF and be like, we have 3 challenges and that's it. So we set our deadlines really early. We initially planned to be done the entire CTF, everything done, and just test as of December 2020. We didn't hit that at all. But then as we went forward, we managed to finish everything by pretty much the end of January, and then we were just putting on finishing touches. So this is just a little update about the CTF. The CTF went really well, but except for the first 15 minutes when 300 people tried to load the page all at once. This is a little health check from our DigitalOcean. You can see that we instantly crashed and completely went down, essentially. Shout out to James for getting us up and running very quickly after that, but we did crash immediately when we went live. So other than that, the event went great. It was pretty quiet the whole time for us organizers. We mostly just watched flag submissions come in. There wasn't much for any of us to do. We thought there was a possibility it would crash and burn and everything would go down. People would be attacking the wrong things. That didn't happen. We had 197 participants. Most of those were students in Western Canada, but we did have quite the span of students throughout Canada and a couple international, as well as a couple industry members representing. We had over 60 teams. I no longer have the stats because we're no longer hosting the CTFD, but we had quite a few teams. All of the top teams ended up being from Alberta, which, being a club from Alberta, feels good. First place was from U of C, second place was from U of A, and third place was a mix of first years from U of C and a lot of high school students from the Calgary area as well. And it was really great exposure for the club. Immediately after the CTF, we got quite a few emails from a couple of companies and a lot of schools around Canada just congratulating us for holding the event and saying that they really enjoyed it and that they would help us next year with advertisement and just that they wanted to be more involved with us, which was really great to see. That concludes pretty much my update on the CTF. Yeah. You're muted, Jeremy.
Sorry, there we go. We also saw a spike in the number of people attending workshops and viewing our workshops after CTF. So yeah, it was a great tool for sort of outreach and getting people interested. I know we had quite a few students who had never done a CTF before and were curious and came out of it wanting to do more and trying to figure out how to learn more about it, which is great. That's how we started this club, was we tried a CTF and decided we really liked it and decided to do more. And that's basically how this club came about. So next on the docket was the next big thing we did this year was the speaker series. So this was largely what the paid membership was for, was to attend the 5 speakers that we had: Samina Amin, Kathy McDonald, Adam McMath, Joel Reardon, and Emily Vincent. Emily Vincent's talk was last week, the last one of the 5 that we had over the year. Our idea was that the club was going to hold workshops and teach people how information security works and actually get them doing stuff hands-on. But we also wanted to connect you with people who really do this outside of the university and show you that this just isn't us playing around in a sandbox at school just for fun. This stuff is real. It actually happens out in the real world. And also that InfoSec is not just hacking, that there's a whole lot of other areas and a lot of facets to it. And so that was partly what we want. That's largely what we wanted the speaker series for. So the speaker series was awesome, I think, myself. I enjoyed every single one of the talks. I thought they were all really fascinating and really interesting. These people, I have to say, were all very interested and fascinated in us. Starting this club, they were all interested to hear. Some of them had actually reached out to us in the beginning to get to know us better. And it was a really great way to actually meet people out there and to be able to ask all of those questions that we have at school, but we might not be able to ask. I think the speaker series is going to be happening again next year, because I think it was a great way to learn what's actually happening out there in the real world. I should say that I'll speak a little later about the people that we've been talking to over the year. And we have had people throughout the year that have seen us doing this and said, would you like me to speak? Can I speak? This sounds really interesting and I want to talk to you guys. So yeah, I expect the speaker series will be a regular thing as well, and that we will have more speakers coming in. Like I said, this is the first year that we've done it. It's hard to remember that a year ago, we were finishing off the first semester of the club when we were still learning and brand new to all of this. So yeah, the speaker series was also, I think, quite a big success. So I'm going to talk about some of the other stuff the club has done to grow. Communications has been a big thing for the club. So our Discord, we tell people, is sort of our main mode of communication. Our Discord has been growing really fast. In fact, over the last month, almost every day somebody has joined, which means the word is getting out and people are learning about us. We have 580 members in our Discord channel. Of that, just about 60% of them have accepted the rules. And if there's anyone watching that hasn't accepted the rules yet, or can only see sort of 3 or 4 channels on the left side of the Discord server, that means you haven't accepted the rules yet and you're not seeing everything that's inside the Discord server. So only 60% of people can see everything in the server right now, about 345. We occasionally will send a message out to tell everyone to accept the rules, and that number will edge a little bit higher. But a lot of people are joining and not noticing that they have to accept the rules to open up the server. That's just a curiosity that we've been keeping track of. It was below 50% last summer, like 40% or just under 40%. And so that number is getting up there. We're happy to see that. We are all over social media. InfoSec U Calgary on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Instagram has been, I think, the one that we've been the most active on. Here you can see on the left some of the posts that we have up there. I'm going to be talking a little bit more about the person that did this, Britta, our Director of Communications, but we have all 3 of those now. They're all active. They've been really great to communicate with people and to get the message out about things. After that, we have our newsletter. We had 121 subscribers to it this year. If you've subscribed, you've been getting the newsletter monthly. Every month we send out updates about things that are happening, what the club is up to. The secret that some may or may not know, we say this every once in a while, but there are flags hidden in the newsletter. So there are points to be had if you're looking around in the newsletter. You can poke around in there and find flags. That has been a great tool for us to communicate. We were also featured in a podcast at the beginning of this year. It's hard, again, it's a long time ago, but way back in, I believe it was September, Emily Baird and myself, Emily is the VP operations, appeared on the What the Tech podcast that's put out by the U of C, talking about our club and what it does. So we were there getting the word out about the club. We also, this is something new that was created this year, was a unified design language, we call it. You might notice that our PowerPoint presentations, everything that we put out there in our newsletters, in our social media, all has a look to it, all uses specific colors. This again was our VP Communications, Britta, who came up with all of this. We have a standard for what the club looks like out there. And that was something that we've created, and I think has been really nice. When you see these things, you know that it's our club. Relationships. So this is something that's been going on largely in the background again. We've been talking to lots of companies out there. We've been setting up meetings with them and telling them about the club. They've been interested to know more about us. I don't want to tell you all of their names, but we've talked. I was trying to come up with a list. I'm not sure. I'm sure I've missed some of them. 2 consulting firms, 3 cybersecurity companies. We have now a relationship with U of C IT Services. The director of IT Services is been an amazing supporter of our club. He's really interested in what it is we do and in helping us learn this stuff. IT Services has not been something that the computer science department or the computer science students have had a lot of communication with, and it's really sad because they run a whole university worth of IT, and they have a wealth of experience and knowledge, and so we know them now. They've been a great help. The director, Brock, has been putting us in touch with people and has been a great supporter of ours. We also had 3 Magpie CTF sponsors. Sorry, that should be 4 Magpie CTF sponsors. One of them was one of the cybersecurity companies that I mentioned above, and approximately 5 other large companies that we've been talking to. Again, I said I didn't want to really give out their names, but we've been talking to these companies, telling them about what the club does, and then they want to know what we're doing, how they can help us, and they also, some of them have been curious about if students are looking for internships. So this is something that we've been trying to develop, and I think in the future is going to be a bigger thing, that we will be able to put up postings for internships from companies, and they will be targeting us specifically because they know that we've been working on these things. So all of those workshops we're doing, those are actually handy. Tonight we're doing one on the Windows or Azure Active Directory. This is because we've been talking to people out there in the real world who have told us that it's something that's really important and that they wish people knew more about. So we're making those workshops with these things in mind. This year, we've also had 2 club mentors. They're both senators at the University of Calgary. The Senate is a group that helps run the university. TJ Zhang and Kathy McDonald, who was one of our speakers this year. They've been advising us in the background, helping us out, connecting us with some of these people that we've been talking to. We also had a booth at B-Sides Calgary, which was a conference that runs, InfoSec conference that runs in Calgary. We, the InfoSec Club, got our own booth, sort of virtual booth there. And it was great because lots of people were interested and curious about us. They'd never heard of us. They came and joined, and we got to chat with them and learn more about what they do. Some of them might be here watching right now. They joined our Discord server after that. And again, we just got connected with more people that could help us out. You might notice in the Discord server, sometimes you can ask a question. You'll get several answers. Some of those people actually work in information security and cybersecurity here in the Calgary area, and were people that we met at B-Sides Calgary. Now, club finances. Sunny, if you want to come on. Sorry, I'm trying to see if I can. I've got one screen. Are you there?
There we go.
There you are. Okay, let me get this back up.
Perfect. Okay, to go over our club finances, you guys, first would be our revenue. Jeremy? Okay, so we got about $550 in membership money. We got $1,000 for our club sponsorships, and we got $7,500 for our Magpie CTF. If we were to put it in percentage, it would be 80%, or a huge chunk went to Magpie CTF. About 11% was our club sponsorships, and about 6% was the money we got from memberships. And now to go over our expenses, in total this year, we spent $267.41 on our workshops. Speaker series costed us about $100, and Magpie CTF costed us a whopping $7,439.08. Again, if you were to look at the chart, it's literally all taken up by Magpie CTF. Since MacBy CTF is a really big chunk of money, to disclose where the money went. Next slide, please.
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, there it is. We gave away about $3,353. This included a variety of different giveaway materials, such as the Try Hack Me vouchers, the stickers, enamel pins, books, rubber duckies, and postage. It does take up a lot of money when you're posting stuff to all over Canada. We gave away $2,176 in cash prizes, and we also had giveaways for Skip the Dishes gift cards that ended up costing us about $1,430. And overall, MacBy CTF cost to host it was $479.62. This included paying for all the servers for hosting all our challenges, boosting our Discord server so that you all can watch the movies, and using StreamYard for our streaming services.
And the big question is sort of what is the state of the club account now? Like, how much money does the club have?
As of now, money in our account, so cash would be $640.53. And accounts receivable, we have a little over $5,000.
Awesome. So yeah, club finances are in really good shape.
Yeah,
things are going really well. I think that's everything for the finance update.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, Sunny.
Perfect.
So they wanted us to sort of try to keep it a secret, but I'm going to go ahead and announce it anyway because I'm not waiting for them. But we won an award very recently from the Student Union. We won the Quality of Education Award for Club Awards for 2020 and 2021, and we also got an honorable mention in the Innovation Award. That also comes with a cash prize of $250. So yeah, this was recognition for all of the workshops we've been doing, and the fact the Innovation honorable mention was for hosting this all online and running the CTF online over the last year. We put in for that award 2 months ago, and just got the word, I think, last week that we had won it. So congratulations to everyone, and thank you all for taking part in all of this. We've been recognized for all of our hard work. That felt really good. This is something that we don't really talk about very much, but I have to take some time to talk about this right now. So all of these workshops, all of this stuff you're hearing all about, this is all put together by our team of executives who work largely in the background because this is all online. You probably almost never see these people unless they're running a workshop. You'll see them in the Discord server from time to time, but otherwise, all of these people are working all the time to build all of the stuff that the club is doing. And to my great shame, they are never going to get enough credit for it, especially during COVID, when all you're going to see is the person that's in front of the camera. So we have a team of 19 people in total. We have 9 what we call full executives. Those are the positions that are elected in. This year we had 1 director, James Lowther, and we also had 9 junior executives at the end of this year. So this is the team, 19 in total. They're the ones that have been running everything and putting everything together. You might not notice, maybe you do, but after every workshop we have, after every speaker series that we have, the exec channel in the club Discord fills up with all of these people, and we have a good 15 to 30-minute meeting talking about what's going on with the club and what's coming up. These guys, that's just the time we spend organizing. Then everything goes out and gets built. There's a whole lot of stuff that we do from the workshops, the speaker series, the CTF. There's no slide on it, and I forgot to mention, but we also do a high school outreach workshop that we've been doing this year. We partnered with Schulich Ignite, a group that teaches high school students how to code, and did a workshop with them. We also have another one coming up on April 1st for high school students that are interested in information security. It's sort of an intro to InfoSec for them. But that's all built by these guys and delivered by them in the background. So you don't get to see them very often because, like I said, it's only the person that's on camera that you really get to see. But this is the team that runs everything. If you see any of these people in the hallway at school when we're all back in person, please stop, say hello, introduce yourself, and say thank you for all their hard work. Anyone that's not a student that's out there, these are all really hardworking people. They're all worthy of your consideration. If you notice them applying for jobs, I recommend them. Give them the time of day. Give them a shot. These people are all fantastic and have been working really hard to put this all together. So I am going to talk about some of our outgoing executives. We're going to talk about the election in a few minutes, but I need to take a few minutes to shower some praise on some of the execs that are now leaving. This is our first full year, and the first time we've had sort of a full year with a group of execs and people that are leaving. This is all on my laptop, so I need to go one at a time. So the first one I'm going to bring up is Britta. Hey, Britta.
Hi.
So I told them that this is all going to be very awkward for them because they don't know what I'm about to say. But for everyone that's out there, this is Britta. Britta is our VP Communications. Britta joined us in February of last year. Right after the club started, we didn't have a VP Communications and we needed someone. Britta applied and was great. She has experience with other clubs doing comms. Then she ran for the position and won. And so over the last year, Britta's been working, again, largely in the background. So a lot of you wouldn't have seen Britta very often. Britta oversaw the creation of all of the club's social media accounts. We get compliments on it all the time when we go into meetings with people outside of the university. They always talk about how great our website looks, how great all of our social media looks. Britta was the one that was making sure that everything looked good for both our website and our design, that everything was unified and that it had a recognizable look. Britta also has overseen the newsletter. So all those newsletters that have been going out, Britta's the one that's building them. Britta's the one that's also hiding the flags in those in case you haven't found them. Britta created that design language that I talked about. So at the beginning of the year, we said to Britta, we want to have a sort of look so that when you see something from the InfoSec Club, it has the unified colors or it all looks the same way. Britta went out and created all of that on her own. All of the promotional material that you see for the club. So if you see posters for Magpie CTF, for any of the speakers, those kinds of things, those would usually be posted up at the university. They've been posted in our Discord server instead and been attached to emails. That was all Britta working in the background. Britta was also one of the leaders for more diversity within the club executive. So Britta was out there trying to recruit more women, especially for our club executive, because this is a problem in computer science. Britta recognized this and was one of the people that was pushing for this. Britta also, during all of this, found the time to run the cryptography workshop at the very last minute that we held in our first semester. Britta's been doing all of this. Britta also helps keep us sort of on track and running in the background. Britta does a lot of the checking things over to make sure that all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. We're going to miss her a lot. She does a lot of work in the background and makes sure that everything looks super polished. And if we look good and we look like we know what we're doing, a big part of that is because Britta's been working really hard in the background doing all of that. So thank you very much, Britta, for all of your hard work. We're going to miss you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been great.
Next, I need to bring up Emily Baird. Emily, are you up?
I'm here.
Emily's here. Okay. Next on the block, Emily Baird. So Emily, again, similar to Britta, joined us in about February of last year, of 2020. Emily has been our VP Operations for the club, a role that we created last year when it became very obvious that when you're hosting a club in person, there's a lot of work that needs to go on in the background to book rooms and book AV equipment and get all of that stuff organized. We were also planning a CTF that was going to require a lot of like ordering food and booking rooms and booking equipment and getting all of that organized and running all of that. That was going to be Emily's job. Emily took the position and then very quickly COVID hit and nothing was in person anymore. So all of that sort of stuff that we imagined VP Operations was going to do evaporated. But that was okay because now everything was going to be shifted online and Emily was there to take care of all of that. So Emily was one of the people who spearheaded us using StreamYard, this platform that you see where we sort of look like a TV show and we can move boxes around. Emily was one of the people that spearheaded that. Emily also spearheaded the speaker series. Last year when we talked about it, Emily said, I want to do that. That sounds great. I want to be in charge of that. So Emily was the one who organized who the speakers were going to be, got in contact with all of them, organized the dates, the times, set up the streams. We sent all of our speakers thank you gifts. That was all done by Emily. So yeah, Emily organized and ran the speakers series. So that whole thing was spearheaded by Emily Baird here. Emily also co-authored the high school outreach workshop that I mentioned earlier. When we came up with that idea, again, Emily said, that sounds great. I want to be involved with that. And so Emily helped build it and then deliver it when we delivered it. She's in the process right now of teaching it to another group of executives so that they can deliver it to new people. Emily also ran and tested many of the workshops that we had in the background. So Emily ran one workshop, Emily?
Yep. Cross-site
scripting. Okay. So it was the cross-site scripting workshop. That betrays that Emily tested, I'd say, a lot, maybe most of the workshops that happened. Emily is great because Emily has a crippling fear of missing out, FOMO, which meant that Emily was volunteering for everything. So Emily was testing workshops. Emily also authored 6 to 7, I believe, CTF challenges for our CTF. Again, you guys might not have seen that, but authoring CTF challenges is really tough work. It's really hard. Emily did a great job of doing that and did a lot of work on the CTF in the background, not only authoring challenges, but working on making sure that things were organized and getting our tech stack built. Emily also worked on fundraising for the CTF as well. So Emily's been had her fingers sort of in every pie in the club and been doing a little bit of everything. Emily has been one of the people who sort of is at every meeting, is always helping out. We're going to miss Emily. She's done a ton of work for our club. Thank you so much, Emily, for your hard work. I'm sure I missed one or two things, but people just don't know how much work you put in the background as well. Thank you very much for all of your hard work. Ladies and gentlemen, clap your hands for both Britta and Emily, and thank you for your hard work, Emily.
Thank you so much. This club was really, I think, the thing that that helped me get through 2020. So I'm glad to see things shaping up and going well.
All right. Next up on the block for honors is going to be James Lowther. James, are you there?
Hi. Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
It's your turn to sit here while I talk about you. So James is the first director of the club. A director is something that we created because we wanted James to be involved and we couldn't create a new executive position. So we created something called a director. James, from the beginning of our club, has been around and slowly got more and more involved last year. And it became very obvious that James really wanted to be involved with running things and organizing and helping us in the background. So we created the director position so that we could, A, give James a title and make sure that James stayed involved in the club. This was because over the last summer of last year, James took on and built 4 workshops on his own. Those workshops are a ton of work. They require that you learn the thing, build problems that work with it, and then lead the whole thing. It takes, we estimate, maybe 40 hours for each workshop. James did 4 of them in the first semester, almost back to back, which is a huge amount of work. While this was going on, James also was doing research and building all of that tech stack that Alex mentioned earlier for our CTF. All of that, how to actually deploy and run the websites and servers and challenges and files and problems for the CTF, that was all James doing work in the background and figuring that out on his own. We had imagined that we would figure it out sort of around October or December. Every time we would hold a meeting, James would come in and say, I figured out more of how this works. Eventually, James built PowerPoints that explained it all, and then James taught it to all of us. James was the director for all of that technical stuff during the CTF, all while going to school, as all of you remember. That's what we're all doing. So James also did a lot of work managing and building out our website. over this last year, infosecucalgary.ca. We're really proud of it. James was one of the ones that was working hard, again, always in the background on that. So the tech stack for the CTF was largely automated. James was also organizing everything, so we had a bunch of GitHub repos in the background that James had built to keep the whole thing organized. Nobody really used them until 2 or 3 weeks before the CTF, when we realized we needed to put all of our code somewhere. And when we needed to do that, James had already had it built and organized and all kinds of documentation written for us for where to put things and how to organize everything. James has had a hand in just about everything that the club has done over the last year. If there were any ever problems in the background, James was usually giving advice or jumping into calls with people and meeting with them. And James has also been, I would say, a great teacher. He ran quite a few workshops, I think, and has been great at those. James's workshops have received quite a bit of viewership, and we always got compliments for those workshops. So again, thank you very much, James, for all of your work this last year. This club would not have existed or had any of that background success or tech success that it had without you. Thank you very much for all of your hard work.
Yeah, thank you. This club's been a great experience, and I've learned a ton. So thanks.
All right. So there is also one more outgoing executive. It is me. Hi. That's a picture of me in business dress, and that's all we're going to say about that.
No, I'm gonna say something about. No. Jeremy is one of the founders of the club. He is between me, Jeremy, Braden, and one of our ex-executives, Hamika. He came to me one day and said, "What if we started an InfoSec club?" And I mostly said yes because I thought it was a joke. But then he started registering the club with the SU. Jeremy's going to be really missed. I think a lot about how much he does and how I'm going to do stuff without him. He created this whole AGM PowerPoint presentation. And I just don't know what we're going to do without him. I won't say too much because Jeremy clearly does not want me to speak. But that's all I have to say.
You can create the AGM PowerPoint. It's just going to change the pictures. This is only supposed to be half an hour, and we're already 40 minutes in. So we're going to keep running. Thank you, Alex. So yes, all of those people are leaving. There's more execs in the background, though, that I didn't get to talk about in honor. Here's a picture of all of us in one of our recent meetings. I frequently thought about how much work we've all put in this club and all of the meetings we were in, but we never have pictures to prove any of it. And I thought, we're not going to be able to prove that any of this existed at all this year or that any of this actually happened. So here's a picture of what a typical meeting of the executive looks like. Some of these people I have still to this day not actually met in person, and have worked with them throughout the last year. I think we've got one person missing here. I think Justin was missing at this from this. He had a test at that time. But yeah, this is this is what it looks like when we all meet and are working in the background. This is our silly picture that we took just for fun. So yes, thank you to all of those people. Anyone that I didn't mention in that outgoing execs section, as far as we know, is planning on being involved in the club again next year. There's quite a few of those junior execs that you saw. Junior executives, they're all going to be promoted to directors, the director position, so that they have more authority, and they've spent the last year learning how the club works. They all know how it's done now. We will be looking for more junior executives next year. If you're interested, I'd say get involved. The whole reason this exists is because these people give up their own time and energy to make it happen. So thank you very much to all of these people for all the hard work that you do and that you are continuing to do in keeping this club alive. With that, I'm going to go over some of the election stuff. So the election for 2021 is going to start in about 15 minutes. There are 36 eligible voters, so 36 of you attended more than half of the workshops. At 7 p.m., you will receive an email with your ballot. It's all being done online. It is all secret ballot, so nobody will be able to see how you voted. If there is anyone who thinks that they should be eligible to vote and doesn't get a ballot, please let us know right away. So just to let you know, there is only one candidate for each position this year. There's nobody. There's no position that has 2 people running for it. Our club still says that you have to get more than 50% support in order to win the position. So all of these people that are running are uncontested. Nobody is challenging them, but you still need to say yes or no whether or not you want them in the position. So they still need to get at least 50% of the club of those voters. Yes, those voters' support in order to win. So you're going to get a ballot. You need to use it to vote. If you vote against these people and somebody doesn't get 50% support, then they don't win the position and the position is empty. If that happens, the execs have to work to try to fill the position, and it's a lot of work. So voting no isn't funny or a meme. It's serious. Please make sure you have a good reason to vote no if that's why if that's your choice. So candidates for president will be Alex Tenney, the current vice president, who you just heard from. For the vice president role will be Josh. We call him Josh 2 because we have 2 Joshes on the exec. Josh CZ. Josh is one of our junior executives. He'll be running for vice president. VP Finance, again this year, will be Sunny, who you just saw earlier. VP Operations, one of the roles that Emily currently has and is leaving, will be Ijaz. Ijaz is our current secretary of the club, so he's stepping up for VP Operations. VP Communications, that's the job that Britta's been doing. Britta is not running, and so one of our junior execs, Justin Yu, is running for that position. For secretary, that was the position that Ijaz had. He's moving to VP Operations. Taking over is one of our junior executives, Amna Adnan. There are 3 VP Tech positions. We call them VP Techs. These are the people who are in charge of a lot more of the technical stuff so that the other execs can do the work that they do. So these are the people that are in charge largely of the workshops and a lot of the technical things that happens. There are 3 of those positions, 3 of them. It's going to appear 3 times on the ballot. You can vote yes for all 3 of them because there are 3 positions. The people that we have running, the first person is Braden Wilms, who is currently a VP Tech. Second person is Josh Novak, who is currently a VP Tech. And the third one is Brandon, who is also currently a VP Tech. Those people currently all have that position, and they are all running again. You can vote yes for all of them on the ballot. They're not running against each other. There are 3 positions and 3 candidates. The last thing I want to do is just explain to you the constitutional amendments that are up. The club constitution says what the club can and cannot do. It's really important. We follow it to make sure that we have some ground rules so that the club runs in a way that everybody can recognize and understands. To change it, we need a vote from the members. So for constitutional amendments, there are 5, a lot of amendments. They're pretty small, but I wanted to just explain them for anyone that wanted to know. The first one is for closed events. It was just adding some wording to make closed events for paid members. So that makes it so that if there's a paid member or that paid members can go to events that are only for paid members. The second is newsletter responsibility. It's currently being done by the VP Communications. The Constitution said it was supposed to be the secretary. That's how we imagined it. It's not how it's working right now. So that change would just shift that responsibility so that it matches what we're doing in reality. The third one is for the term of office. The Constitution says that execs are in charge from September 1st to August 31st. That's what we sort of thought would happen, that you would be in your position starting at the beginning of the school year. Turns out when you hold your election at the end of March, not taking over until September is a really bad idea. Also, we do a lot of the work preparing the year, the workshops, the CTF over the summer. So we want the execs to start taking over in May, not September. So this would change that so that they start their position officially. They take over from May 1st till April 30th of the next year. Fourth one is creation of directors. I mentioned that James Lowther was our first director. That was something that we made up whole cloth because James was doing a lot of work and he needed recognition for what he was doing. This has been a ton of work, this whole club. And those 9 executives that you saw, those elected positions, that's not enough to make all of this happen. That's why we have the junior execs. And now I think we need directors, this title directors, in order to help the execs do all of that work. So the director role helps the execs, but also recognizes those people that are doing all of that work in the background so that they get some sort of official recognition of what they're doing. And the last one is just a change of titles. So our constitution calls the VP Finance a treasurer. We don't call them that. The VP Communications is officially the communications director. We don't call them that. VP Operations is just called Operations, but they need a VP. And then Executive at Large Domain Specialist is what the VP techs are officially called. We had no idea what to call them. And we came up with this stuff. It doesn't actually match what we're doing. So we just want to change those so that the titles all match what we actually use day to day. Those are all of the amendments. That's the explanation. If you have any questions, throw them up in the actual voting in the ballots. It'll explain each of those changes and show you what it is in the Constitution. So votes will be mailed out at 1900 hours. So that's in about 6 minutes. They'll be mailed out to everybody. You'll get them in your inbox. You have until 5:30 p.m. April 5th, 2021 to vote. So that's next Monday at 5:30 to vote. If you have any questions at all, just ask me. You can direct message me on Discord and let me know. Otherwise, that's everything for the AGM. If you have any questions, just toss them in. Otherwise, we're going to get started with the workshop because we went way long on all of this. So thank you everyone for a great year. Thank you to all the executives for all of your hard work, to all the students that attended, to all the members of the wider community and the industry here in Calgary who have gotten involved and have been helping us out. It's been a huge year going from a brand new club who didn't really know anything and was just learning about the industry and learning about the area of information security to, I think, one of the best clubs on campus doing, I think, a ton of work, more than most, and really helping people to learn this field that the university on paper has a specialization in. But if you had to go out to job interviews after, I think you'd have a hard time proving to them that what you learned in your classes was enough to do the jobs that are out there. I think what we're doing is going to prep you guys to actually make a move and actually know things that you can apply and help build into a career or into some expertise out there in the real world. So thank you all for doing that. We'll move on now to the workshop. Alex?
Hello.
Hey.
I'm going to share my screen. I am going to try and go through this quickly, just so, because we're running a little short on time. I assumed the workshop would be about an hour and 15. We don't have that time. We'll see. But yeah, Azure Active Directory. I wanted to do a workshop on this largely because Jeremy mentioned it, but we have been talking to quite a few companies, and I myself have been talking to different people within the community in cybersecurity, and a lot of times they throw Active Directory as something we should go learn. I'm specifically going to be focusing on Azure Active Directory, which I will go into why that is different pretty soon. So to start, here is the link to attendance. We talked about needing to be a full member to vote. I don't think this means anything anymore because we've already decided who gets to vote. So fill it out for our own good sake. We like to know who's coming to our workshops. It's helpful for us to see what people like us to do.
Sorry, I will say, if this is the workshop that puts you over the halfway mark to vote, still sign up and we'll make sure you get a ballot to vote.
All right, so sign it up. It might pull you over the halfway mark, and that would be nice, so you could vote. I also need you to download the Azure Cli. If you open any Debian terminal, so your Kali machine, Ubuntu, you should just be able to apply a sudo apt update and then sudo apt install Azure-Cli. Do this sooner rather than later because your apt update might take a long time. Can someone post the attendance in chat? Or we did it. Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so to start, we're going to talk about Windows Active Directory. Windows Active Directory typically is what people hear of and people talk about because it's an older version or an older Active Directory. So what is it? Windows Active Directory is the directory service for Windows domain networks. It lives in on-premise, so like physical servers called domain controllers. And each domain controller contains a catalog of users and computers that are authorized to access resources in the network. That's very wordy and confusing, so let's walk through a scenario. Alice does all her work, her computer science work, at the labs at the university, which may have been true in pre-COVID days. She saves her assignment and signs out of the machine that she was working on. The next day, she can access the same assignment on a different machine. That was Windows Active Directory at work. It can also deny access to unauthorized users. So the fact that she was able to sign out of a machine and hop on a new machine that had nothing to do, like the file wasn't local. That is what Active Directory does. It allows you to access different files and resources that you might want from multiple different machines. The important part about that is that it's physical. Those files were being saved on a server that was a physical thing that the university holds somewhere. Windows Active Directory is the precursor that works with Azure Active Directory. So before we talk about Azure Active Directory, let's talk about Azure. What is it? So Azure is a public cloud computing platform. Everything now is becoming cloud. It's like the hot new thing. So there's a lot of terms that go with cloud, infrastructure as a service. That's stuff like all of our different VMs and DigitalOcean servers that we get up and running, platforms as a service, and then software as a service. All of those are contained on cloud. It's basically someone else will hold a server for you and you will use their server in replacement for having your own physical server because they're big, they're bulky, they're expensive. You might not need that much of a server to justify having a whole server, etc. They're used for analytics, virtual computing, storage, networking, and much more, and they can be used to replace your on-premises servers. What the benefit of Microsoft Azure is basically it's everything all in one place. There's lots of cloud services that will let you host a VM, they'll let you host files, etc. But it doesn't do everything all in one place. So this gives the businesses the ability to host their cloud computing resources in that one place. Some problems that may prevent this process from being streamlined even further, though, are that lots of interconnected cloud services are difficult to manage. So if you have lots of different websites and apps that are running on a cloud service and you have to individually manage logins and your users on that, that's a lot, and you might not have the manpower for that. And not all resources are cloud-based. There's lots of companies who started out before cloud computing was a thing, and they still have physical servers. That means that you can't just entirely use Azure as your solution because you still have physical servers that you need to deal with. That's where Azure Active Directory comes into hand. So the formal definition of Azure Active Directory is it's Microsoft's enterprise cloud-based identity and access management solution. In cybersecurity, you'll hear tons about identity and access management because it's basically the thing that allows people to access resources based on roles. So it solves the two problems that I raised in the previous slides. First of all the managements of users, their permissions, and even their sign-on credentials is all in one place. So that problem of having so many cloud services that are interconnected and having all those different sign-ons, all the different users having to try and understand how those works, suddenly happens on one dashboard. As well, Azure Active Directory connects with on-premise Windows Active Directory, so in order to manage both cloud services and physical services. So Windows Active Directory stores all of those users and their permissions for on-premises servers, and suddenly Azure will help you connect those. Another big benefit of Azure Active Directory is it creates single sign-on. So I have a lot of things I need to log in for work. A lot of different services. I have my GitHub. I have a bunch of different VM stuff that I need to log in, like vSphere. I also just have general servers that store files and let me access my files. It means that all I have to do is use one username and password, and it understands who I am, what I have access to, what I don't, and I don't have to worry about what is my password for this website. It also makes it easier for actual sysadmins, whoever's doing that administration of those services, because they don't have to manage Alex Tenney in 6 different services. Alex Tenney just appears once, and they can figure out what permissions I should have. So Windows Active Directory versus Azure Active Directory. They basically sound the same. It's very unclear what's different about them. And the answer in very brief terms is everything is different. These are just a little bit of comparison of what services are used in order to create certain things. So you sign on with cloud-based protocols in Azure Active Directory, but also with Windows Active Directory, they use NTLM and Kerberos to sign in. You'll notice this, I'm not going to go through all of these, but basically every service that they use to provide something different is different from each other. So they're not the same, they just work together. So working together, Azure acts as the middleman between your physical Active Directory and your user's sign-on. So I am an end user, and I have my laptop that I use for work, and so I open it at the beginning of the day, and I want to sign in. That directs me to Azure Active Directory. Azure Active Directory is the cloud that will figure out who I am based on my credentials, who is Alex Tenney, what does she have permission to, and then based on that, it might direct me to a physical server that my company owns that is at a building somewhere, or it might direct me back to a cloud, to the cloud computing resources that it's hosted on. But basically all it is that middleman that's going to decide where I should be going if I actually have access to it at all. So this is just another scenario. So in the morning, I go to work and I log into my laptop. This is a managed device. They know who the devices are. When I described Windows Active Directory, I said that it's also able to store devices, not just users, so it knows that my laptop belongs to me. But since this isn't really on the Active Directory yet, I can't really access much. I can only access whatever's saved locally to that computer and stuff on the internet because that is hosted to everyone. The majority of the stuff I need for work is actually on a private network. So I'm still on just my normal laptop and I try to go to www.mywork.secretwebsite.com, but I get an access denied page because it has no idea who I am. Instead, I use a VPN to access a private network that my company is using. The VPN asks me to log in. My credentials match those that are stored in the Active Directory. So Azure looks at my credentials when I log into the VPN and says, we know that user, you exist. If you're not a user on Active Directory, then the VPN's not going to grant you access. It's going to say, I don't know who you are, like, what's going on? You don't have access to any of this stuff. Once logged into the VPN, you can now access the private network, and you can go to that website that I originally tried to go to before. This website could be anything. It could be my GitHub. It could be servers to actually get files. It could be software or an app or something. The website might ask you to log in again, but those credentials are going to be the same as what you logged into your VPN for because Azure creates single sign-on. So now I just want to go through some more important terminology. Microsoft uses a lot of very interesting terminology that sometimes conflicts with one another. I don't believe that you will fully understand all this terminology in this, but I tried to just go through the important parts so you guys would quickly understand this workshop. So users. Users are the accounts that are actually stored in the Active Directory, and they're the biggest thing in the Active Directory. They can be employee accounts, they can be automation accounts, guest accounts, anything. But they are the things that actually have permissions to access things. There are two types of users in Azure Directory. They're called guest users versus just regular users. Guest users have the lowest permissions. They'll be able to access the least in the network. And normal users can they can be admins and they can have the most permissions. They can come from both inside and outside Azure Active Directory. You will see here where it says sourced from in this screenshot. They can be a Windows Azure Active Directory account. So that means they were created within Windows Active Directory and they existed there from the beginning. Or you can invite people from outside. This one's a Microsoft account, but it could be a Gmail account. It could be anything. That's a point of insecurity just because you don't necessarily know where your users come from. They could come from anywhere. You don't really know who you're adding. As I said before, there can be guest users and also just regular users. Roles. Users assume roles, which are actually the permissions that they're given. who should be allowed read access, who should be allowed write access, who should be an administrator. So some people are able to not access a website at all because they don't have any need. There's no point. One of the first things you learn in cybersecurity is give people the least access as possible. They might be able to write things, create different accounts, create different enterprise apps or whatever. But they also might be an administrator who can give roles to users, who can delete users, add users, gives them entirely permissions. So Microsoft actually has a bunch of built-in roles. You can go to, Microsoft has very good documentation, and they have tons of built-in roles you'll see here. So there's a couple different kinds of examples of roles in this slide. So there can be directory readers, which can read user data settings in the Active Directory. So this could be, you could see all the different users that are inside the Active Directory and see what permissions they have to see and maybe their personal information. The billing administrator, which can perform common billing related attacks. Global administrator can manage the aspects of Azure Active Directory, and there's many more. You would have seen in that Microsoft documentation page that there's like massive amounts of pre-created roles that Microsoft did. You can also create your own depending on the type of account you have in Azure Active Directory. So roles are just the permissions that users are given. Groups. So then the next thing that you need to understand is groups. Groups are just a collection of users. They allow us to mass apply roles which are inherited to the members of the groups. So maybe you have a bunch of people on a team that all need to access the same resources. You can go through and individually add those users and then give them the roles that they need. But that could be painful when people join and leave the team. It's a lot of management for whoever is managing the server, sysadmin and IT people. So it's much easier to create groups which are given those roles, which then apply to the users. I talked about this. They're similar to Linux groups. When you ch group users on your machine, you're giving them certain read-write permissions to different files on the machine. It's like that, but it just deals with things in the cloud. So the final terminology that's a little weird, this one's probably the weirdest, is a tenant. Tenant describes the entire Active Directory ecosystem and organization within the Active Directory. So it's like all of the users, all of the groups, and all of the resources that are stored in the Active Directory. You can create multiple tenants within your own personal Active Directory, and they're completely isolated from one another, which is really nice if you have a lot of organizations, or if you have a really big organization that you want to keep very separate if they work on different products, etc. So now let's play around. That was like a lot of theory about Azure Active Directory, but it didn't really tell us that much, obviously, because we just learned a lot of terms. Before I move on, does anyone have any questions about Azure Active Directory or Windows Active Directory? I may or may not be able to answer them. Because there's lag, I am going to move forward, but if you have questions, toss them in the chat and I'll try and answer them to the best of my ability throughout the workshop. But yeah. Why use Azure over Windows? Azure is, so they're not the same thing. You don't use one or the other. Windows will be if you're on-prem, if you have physical servers in a location, and Azure will be if there's ever if you're using cloud resources, and you can use both. So you don't have to just choose one, they can work together. That is the point of Azure. So enumerating Active Directory, obviously we are into security and we want to see how you can possibly exploit these things. So while Azure Active Directory definitely helps manage security, specifically blue team security within an organization, we want to see what can happen when it's not done correctly. So we're going to be using a command called Azure AD, which essentially allows you to access a graph API that Microsoft has created for us. You can think of the graph like those very theoretical graphs that we see in our computer science courses. Each node is an object. So it could be a user on the machine, it could be a group, it could be a resource that you have access to, and then they have different relationships to other things. So a user is related to the group that they are in, and they also are related to the resources that they have access to. So it's a graph entity can be any object which the Active Directory stores, and it allows us to see role-based access control, which lets users have access rights only to the information that they need to do their jobs. I said you always want to give people the least access possible because it's just more secure that way. You're not going to accidentally give someone access to something they don't have or forget to remove it. Azure Active Directory provides programmatic access to directory objects such as users, groups, organization, contacts, and applications. For us, all that means is we're going to be able to see it in terminal. You could also script with it if that was something you were doing within your company, but mostly it just means that we get to see it in a nice terminal, which feels very hackery. Constraints. So I'm going to be giving you guys access to an account within my Azure Active Directory. This account isn't a real account. Microsoft expects you to give a credit card for every account you make in the Active Directory so they can bill you if you choose to use some of their cloud services and are using a ton of data. Obviously, I'm not going to make an account with a credit card on it, and it recognizes that. So it will keep telling you that if you try and run certain commands, it will tell you that you don't have a subscription. But if you run AZAD, it won't yell at you for that reason. We've given that user a role where they're able to see things within the Azure Active Directory. So all that command will do is it'll ping the API that Microsoft has created and be able to return different JSON objects that exist within the Azure Active Directory. JSON being a programming language which looks a lot like a database in a text file. So enumerating Azure AD. The first thing you want to do in Azure AD whenever you have access to it, an Active Directory account is you want to see what resources you already have access to. Don't fight to hack what you don't need to. You might just have access to everything. You never know what your sysadmins did. You never know what the IT group has decided on their role-based access. They might just give access to everyone. The way that Azure Active Directory works is it automatically gives everyone access to everything, which in my opinion is not a good way to go about things, but it's how it works. So you might just want to see what you already have access to if they haven't explicitly restricted your user. Then you also want to look for any groups on the machines and users that are in those groups. It's interesting to figure out who you want to maybe move laterally into, who would have more permissions to specific resources that you want to see than you, and just like what they might have access to that you don't. So Microsoft, again, has amazing documentation, very, very big documentation of all of the different commands that you can run with this command AZAD. I will go through some of them later, but first we're going to have to do some things to log into our account on Azure Active Directory, and I want to get to that first. A side note, I talked about our constraints before, about how we were constrained by the type of user that you guys are using on the Active Directory. Another constraint is we typically do all of our workshops in Kali Linux, just so everything is streamlined and we can show you guys the commands and it's going to be the same across the board. PowerView is a common tool used to enumerate Azure Active Directory because people tend to use Azure Active Directory in conjunction with Windows Active Directory, which works on Windows machines. It essentially allows you to use PowerShell commands to see what's inside the Active Directory, but we downloaded PowerShell onto a Kali machine and then tried to download PowerView on top of it, and it immediately recognized it wasn't in a Windows machine and did not like it. So we're not actually able to use that. You are able to use it if you're on a Windows machine, so no Nix machines, which are Unix machines, so Linux, macOS, FreeBSD, etc. But if this is something you really want to get into, I really recommend downloading Power View and just playing around with it. It allows you to see a lot of what's inside an Active Directory in a way that feels very natural to people who deal with terminals a lot. So starting, I said that we're going to need to log in to Azure AD. So this is now when you're going to bring up your terminal, and we're all going to need to run this command, which I'm going to send in the chat. Essentially, it's going to just log you into the account that I've created for you. And it allows no subscriptions because I talked about how our account doesn't actually have a subscription. It doesn't have a credit card applied to it or anything. And your terminal will spit a ton of errors into it telling you that you don't have a subscription. We're just going to move past that. So if you run this command when you have the Azure Cli installed, it will give you a warning saying you don't have a subscription, and then the JSON object of your user. This is what a JSON object looks like in case anyone was not aware. It will usually say what the type of object is. So the cloud name, we're going into the Azure cloud. This is our user's ID. They're a tenant level account. They have an ID, and this is their username and the type of user that they are. So we're now actually logged in to the Azure Active Directory, which means we can actually start enumerating. Just for the rest of the workshop, this user, her name on the Azure Active Directory, and if you look her up, her name is Jane Doe. I will sometimes refer to her as Jane Doe, but that is testuser@alextenny@gmail.onmicrosoft.com. That is who I'm referring to. It is the user that you logged into. So as of now, you are Jane Doe. You are that user. I did just want to show you guys a little bit of what Azure AD does, the commands. So we can run all of these commands in this documentation that I sent. So we could list the Azure add app owners. If we run this, so all the commands are prefixed. Oh, it didn't like that. All the commands are prefixed with AZAD. And then you'll have to give some other command. I didn't pre-pick. I'm trying to avoid the ones that will just give you the answers to our to all of our workshops, but I want you to go through the Active Directory and just look around and see what's going on for a little bit. And while you're doing that, I want you to find the web server that your user has access to. You are a user on the Active Directory, and go to it to get the flag. So you are looking for a website. I recommend going through all of those commands and using your Google foo, maybe Control-Fing that really big documentation to try and find commands that might help you. Yeah, and so I'm going to give about 5 minutes for you guys to look around. Please enter in the chat when you have the flag. And yeah. Something to note is that websites are sometimes called apps within Azure Active Directory because they are technically an app. So that's a little hint on what you should look up on the thing. All right. I'll return back in 5 minutes. I'm trying to think. I know. French Toast, I am trying to answer your question. If I can't, you might try and run. Cli pre-installs your Azure CLI. Oh, it worked just now. Just so anyone knows, I'm going to go down this, but Cli does have a pre-installed CLI. If that's out of date, you might want to remove it using this sudo apt remove Azure CLI and reinstall it. It might just fix any issues that you have. But other than that, let me know when you guys get the flag, or if you need a hint. So this is just a note that I forgot to add the flags to Orchid, so we're doing that right now, but you might not be able to test with Orchid yet. Just give us a second. My second note is that I was in the CTF mode when I was creating this workshop, and our prefix for the CTF was Magpie, and I did not change it from Magpie to UCSec. So instead of looking for a typical flag prefix of UCSec, you are looking for Magpie. I hope that helps. The site should, if you can get into it, should have the flag on it. I just want to remind you guys that your login credentials are testuser@alexandertenney@gmail.com, which I will send in the chat, and your password is kakaka1. But go to the website when you find it. I'm going to give 1 to 2 more minutes just because we were adding the flags. The flags should be added now. So if you test Orchid, but you can DM Emily or Jeremy in the Discord, and they will also let you know if you have the right flag. Jeremy wanted to note, in my email, there are 2 X's in my name, not 1. So if you're typing in the username and password, there's 2. All right, so I think 2 people got it, or at least are very close. Do people want more time? Do they want me to go on forward with the answer? Or do you have any questions? The flag should now be an orchid, so I think you're good to go on that front. That is a good question. What are the other URLs for? Oh, I just got very confused because I saw my mouse on the stream and then not on the page. I'm going to go through with the answer and maybe not answer Tyler's question. So the Azure Active Directory CLI allows you to look inside the Active Directory to see what's actually on it. So if we look at all of the apps, there is a command app list, which according to the documentation lists applications. So it will list all of the apps that are running on the Active Directory. So if I go in and run that command, it's going to take a while because it's pinging the Active Directory, but it sends you a huge JSON object. There's actually 2 JSON objects inside of it. You can see when they start and end with these big curly braces, but there are 2 websites. In my solution, I grep for HTTP because I told you guys that it was going to be a website, and websites typically start with HTTP. So I grepped for that, and I actually get 2 URLs, you'll see. One is Magpie Machines, and one is Magpie Automation. If you go through further, you can also give app ID an argument of the ID, which you find in that big JSON object. If we go through it and find the beginning of the second entry, you will see that there is an app ID with a very long string, so it's unique. You can put that app ID into another command for Azure Active Directory, and it will spit out just the information about that specific app. So that one says also gives information about admin consent description, and it says allow the application to access Magpie machines on behalf of a signed-in user. What this means is we just have to be signed in as a user on the Active Directory to be able to access that website. So if we go to the URL and open the link in a web browser, it's going to take us to that website. Mine is cached, so I'm going to open an incognito browser and go to that website instead, so you guys can see what yours would say. It's going to prompt you to sign into your account, so we're going to take that really big string of our username, and then our password of ka1. It's going to recognize that we belong on the Active Directory and give us that flag. So what it was happening is we were able to see all of the apps on the machine. We are also a user on the Active Directory, so it's just letting anyone who's a user on the Active Directory in. Jeremy says a fun fact is that that flag was added twice, so it's actually now worth 100 points. 2 separate flags rather than 50 points. We actually had a cap on our workshops of how many points each flag was allowed to add, so that was a special flag apparently. So you're all very lucky, and it will help you on the leaderboard if you came to this. So yeah, the solution was just to actually access the web page through once you found that it existed. When we navigate to the website, it makes us sign in. This is Active Directory at work. Once we do that, we have the flag. So Tyler asked what the other URL on the page was. It's another web app that's clearly running on this machine. It was called Magpie Automation. I'm just looking for the link so I can go to it. If I try and go to that one the same way that I tried to go to the original Magpie machine page, it denies my access. So that tells you that we don't quite have the user that's allowed to get in. It's looking at our user and being like, nope, they're not allowed access at all. So you might have to hold on to that one. And this is what Active Directory does. It essentially allows people access to different websites and resources on the machine. So challenge 2, that was your first challenge. Challenge 2 is what other groups does the account have access to, and then what else can you look at in the directory because of those permissions. So you might want to try and figure out what groups are on the machine if your user is in that group and what that group actually does. That is my hint. I do want to remind you guys about the different roles that are pre-built in Microsoft Azure. You might want to look on there if you find different roles groups running on the machine, and also again the Azure AD documentation. I'm going to give 7 minutes for that. The URL from the last one is just an app that's hosted on the Active Directory. You can host software through the cloud, through Azure, and it connects them to the Active Directory as a resource. You will see that if I go through and run Azure AD app list, there is one URL called https://magpiemachines.azurewebsites.net. This is because I didn't want to pay for a domain or connect our domain up, but you could change that if you wanted to. And that should take you to the flag if you log in as the user. So I'm going to give a hint to you guys who are working on it just to push you in the right direction. The command to figure out all of the groups that are running in this Active Directory is AD group list, and that gives you 2 groups. You might want to follow in the direction of and figure out what those 2 groups do. One might be very important to you. The name of test user is Jane Doe, the typical name for just unknown person who is a girl. Jane Doe. So she might show up as just Jane. She might show up as Jane Doe, but that is her name. My suggestion, I am going to give a hint. You might want to figure out who's in those groups and maybe if your current user is in that group. I'm going to give you guys another 2-3 minutes and then I'm going to walk through the answer. I'm going to give one final hint to push people in the right direction. You are going to be looking for someone's personal information, possibly their street address. And I will come back in 2 minutes to show you guys the answer. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and walk through the answer. This one might be a little less intuitive than the last one because you were just looking for a website on the last one. But the answer was, what groups does the account have access to? If you go quick, Ethan, you'll get it before I finish the solution. So AZAD group list will actually give you all of the groups that are running in the Active Directory. So there are 2 in our Active Directory. There's one called Automation Group, which we're not going to worry about right now, but there's another one called Directory Readers. And its description in the JSON object is a group for all users with the role Directory Reader assigned. If you go to the Microsoft documentation, there we are. So directory readers can read basic directory information commonly used to grant directory read access to applications and guests. If you read further into this role, what you might learn is that you're given access to the portal when you're given this role. Something else we might be able to learn through our terminal is who actually has access to, or who is given this role. So if you go AZAD group member list tac G for the actual group that we're looking into, it again spits a bunch of JSON objects of everyone in the group. Specifically, the user that we are logged into is in this directory readers group. So there are 2 solutions to this challenge. One was unintended, but I will show you the intended one first. Azure has a portal for all of its management of all the resources. So if you go to portal.azure.com, it should bring you to a login page. Mine is remembering it looks like who I am, but I'm just logged in. I'm logged in as myself. I need to not log in as myself. So I'm logged in as that Alex Tenny Jane Doe account. Her password is KKK1. Don't save. And we get this big dashboard. This is Microsoft Azure itself. This isn't Microsoft Azure Active Directory, just Azure itself with all of the cloud resources. You see there's app services, load balancers, there's a security center, there's tons of stuff. But we are interested in the Active Directory. When we go to the Active Directory, it brings us this huge board. This isn't normal. Most of the time, when you log into the Azure portal, it's going to yell at you and tell you don't have access to this, unless they've specifically given you access. I made an account. Which I can hopefully log into to show you this. So I called this account regular. I just wanted to show you guys what happens when just a normal user Oh, there it is. Forgot the password temporarily. When just a normal user tries to access the portal, this person is not given that directory reader. They just get a you do not have access screen. But because our Jane Doe character was given that directory reader role, she is not. She is actually allowed to sign in and see things. This is your whole panel. You can see everything that you have access. You can see everything. Directory readers cannot edit anything. So they're just able to see things. And you can also see all of the users that exist on the Active Directory. So you'll see there's me. I'm the owner of the Active Directory. There is you, Jane Doe. There is regular user, which I just showed you to show that they can't access the portal. And then there's Ren Kucherik. If we look at Ren Kucherik's account, we can see everything about him. We can see job info. I'm going to make this slightly bigger. But we can also see their contact info, which includes all of their address information, including their street address. I now realize that one is a UCSec flag, because I guess I changed that one and forgot about it. So we might need to get the other admins to change it, but that is the flag. There is also an unintended solution, which we didn't realize. Ironically, despite not everyone having portal access and reader access to the account, they still might be able to access things through the AZAD commands. So it just restricts, for lack of a better term, layman's who might not immediately go to a CLI. But if you do AZAD user list, you are going to get all of the users on the Active Directory, including Ren Kucherik, where his street address is stored right here. That was unintended. Our intended solution was for you guys to see that Jane Doe had a directory reader role and to go through the portal that way. But it is possible to find the flag in this challenge through the terminal. All right. I kind of went through all of these slides. But now we're on our third and final challenge, because this is a shorter workshop, because I knew that we would have the the AGM today. So for this third challenge, don't use the terminal. Don't use that AZAD command. You can, but I imagine it would be incredibly hard. This is technically an actual privilege escalation. So how can we escalate / change our privileges to access a new resource on the machine? Some of you noticed a resource that is running on the Active Directory that we couldn't access before, and also that secondary group, the automation group that we didn't deal with. I might have mentioned that automation groups are very good to try and access if you are trying to escalate your privileges in any situation. So I want you guys to try and escalate your privileges to see that other resource. I'm going to give everyone 5 minutes, and then I'm going to give a hint because I anticipate this one being a little harder. So it's now been 5 minutes. To push you guys in the correct direction, I am going to give a couple hints. So in the last challenge, we found that Jane Doe was a part of the directory reader group. However, there was a group called automation. As I said, automation groups tend to be, in any scenario, tend to be quite privileged. They're used for people to test things automatically with scripts running, and often those groups or users or roles need pseudo privileges to be able to access. They also tend not to be that secure because people who run automation don't want to jump over hoops and barrels to try and log into that account through a script. So they tend not to be that difficult to get into. So we're looking at the automation group. Within the portal, I would try and see what the automation group does, learn a lot more about it, and you can find that Azure user Jane Doe, because she's a directory reader, she's able to see all of the groups within the portal. You might be able to learn things about the automation group that might help you. I'm going to give another 3 minutes. This one should take a little bit longer, and I'm anticipating that. And of course, let me know if you've got the flag. It helps me understand how to pace. Jeremy wants to remind everyone that him and Emily are in the Discord breakout room if you need help or you want to talk to anybody. They've done this workshop before and they know the solution to this answer, so they might be able to push you in the right direction. Does everyone want more time, or do they want me to go through the solution? More time. Okay, I'll give another 5 minutes if you guys are having think you have a foothold. This one does take a little bit longer just due to some things that are out of our control. So I think I'll return at 8:10 to give you guys the solution, just to try and give you guys as much chance as possible. At 8:07, I think I'll ask if you guys want slightly more of a hint. I promised at 8:07 I'd come back with one more hint, and here I come. This is a reminder when I talked about users. Something that is particularly strange and occasionally insecure about Azure Active Directory is no matter the role you have assigned in Active Directory, no matter what permissions you have, everyone can invite a guest user. That guest user might not be given any roles. They're not by default given any roles, but you are able to invite a guest user. Especially, and Jane Doe can do this. I'll give you guys another 2-3 minutes to see if you can get it. It looks like there are now a couple of people who likely have the flag or are very close to getting the flag. So I am going to start stepping through the solution just because we are also 10 minutes over time. So when you look on the machine, you know that there's a group called automation. We always want to look at automation groups because they tend to be overpowered and very privileged and also not very secure. So now I want to talk about dynamic group roles. Azure Active Directory allows you to dynamically assign users to groups based on predefined criteria. It looks like a query, like you might query a database, because essentially Active Directory is a database of users and their permissions. So if a user's country is set to Germany, then you might add them to the Europe group, and people in Europe might have specific permissions. Once a dynamic role is created, it may take up to 24 hours to assign pre-existing users to the group, but newly created users will get assigned to that group immediately. So when we look at the automation group within the portal, we're able to see that they are a dynamically created group. And their query is that if the user principal name, which is fancy Microsoft speak for the email, the front part of the email contains the string automation. So this is just saying if somewhere in the email there is the string automation, they're probably a part of the automation group. So let's assign them to that. Companies do this. They don't necessarily give them the permissions because of this, but they will create an email that is the person's username and then automation inside of it at their email.com in order to indicate that this is the account that they use for automation purposes. It is what people actually do. So this one is saying if the account has automation in it, it's an automation account, so assign them to the automation group. So your first step to solving this is to set up a burner email that fits within the criteria of the automation group's dynamic rules. I created a Gmail account, Ted Bundy, because that's the name that came to my mind at the time. And the actual email is just fake.automation7@gmail.com. I know when Jeremy did this, he found some website that allowed you to create a burner email very easily. Gmail's not necessarily the way to go about this, but it is an easy way to set up an email. So that email must have the string automation somewhere, or else it's not going to fit within the dynamic rules. So this is the account I made. Like I said in the hints that I gave at 8:07, was everyone can make a new user in Azure Active Directory, which is debatably not that secure because you don't know who's being added or where they come from. Typically, those users are given the lowest set of permissions. They're typically not really able to do anything on the Active Directory unless you have groups that look like this. So you can invite a guest user to the Active Directory. If you invite that guest user with that burner email that you just made, they might be added to the automation group. And as I said, they are added immediately because they are new users. Then in the email, you're going to get a verification invite to actually join the Active Directory. You want to actually join the Active Directory. And since your name matches the rules in the dynamic group, you will be added to the automation group. The automation group has access to that other URL that Vivid Eradicator was talking about at the beginning of our session. If you go to it, you are going to get the flag because they are the group that has access to it. I am going to go through and do that actually physically instead of just going through slides. So we are currently Jane Doe. Like I said previously before this workshop, I set up a new Gmail that is fake.automation@gmail.com, fake.automation7@gmail.com. I'm going to invite them. Off screen, I'm going to go to that Gmail because I don't know what cookies my screen will show you, and I don't want to risk that. But I am I wonder what the password is that I created for this. Because I did not save it. Well, we're going to create a new Gmail, and you're all going to watch it. So I'm going to create an account for myself. Going to be Ted Bundy again because that's what I said. I know you're all making fun of me in the chat and I'm just ignoring it. Automation.fake. Hopefully I can use that. And the password will be ka. I'm going to remove this from my screen. Actually, that's optional. No, I don't. I'm not giving it my phone number. March 5th. Rather not say. It's creating this email. I agree to the terms and conditions. Oh no, which one is this going to log into? Good thing I moved it. It logged into my real account. So now that we have hopefully had this fake email set up, we are then going to add that user to our directory. Invite them. And we will take our sweet time trying to deal with the invite email, because it's going to take its sweet time getting to us, as we know. Emily has brought up I might have put in the wrong email. It is automation.fake@gmail.com. Thank you, Emily, for being useful while I panic while doing a demo, because that's how the world always works. It never works when you do it live. It only works when you do it with yourself or with people who you feel comfortable around doing it. So now we have the invite email. So we're going to accept it. We're going to sign out and sign in with a different account. A password, and then it's going to send us a code, which we have to wait for. Well, and then we will put in. It will load. We're not a robot. I don't know why I went the long way around for that, but I did. Accept terms and conditions, and then we should be in the Active Directory. We won't actually have very much access because I didn't actually give the automation group that much access, but you can see on this screen, Magpie Automation, that URL that Tyler was talking about at the beginning. Tyler is Vivid Eradicator. I know him in person. That is why is there, and we're able to access it, unlike we were able to access it the first time around. And we get the flag. Those darn interns always giving away our passwords. So that's a very simple priv-esque. It does happen. We did get it. We did get it offline. They have been able to pull it off in different companies. So it's mostly just about your sysadmins or your ITs and IT administrators and them being able to properly assign roles. There are other actual privasks that you guys would maybe consider more hacky, but they're out of the scope for this small of a workshop. These are just some resources that I used to create this workshop. There are a couple, there's a Try Hack Me room, which I did. Try Hack Me has a couple boxes that are based on Active Directory that do allow you to do privilege escalations, and also just one on the basics, like very basic how you look through Windows Active Directory, and then all of the Microsoft documentation, which is very comprehensive. That's it for the workshops. And that's it for our year. This is the last workshop. So I recommend you guys all vote. Jeremy's in it now, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
No, I just wanted to say that the ballots did go out at 7 o'clock. So everybody that did attend more than half of the workshops and signed the attendance sheets, you should have received your ballot. They've all gone through from what I've seen. 36% of people have already voted. You have a week to do that. Next week, we are going to have a meeting Monday at 6 p.m. We'll be revealing the results of the election. We'll also be going over what the leaderboard looks like at the end of the year after all of the workshops, maybe talk about some of the flags that went in there. And then the plan is to try to do a little bit of relaxing by playing maybe some Among Us or Jackbox, or we had some other things in mind that we might just play around, maybe King of the Hill on Try Hack Me, for anyone that wants a less relaxing time.
We're really not scary. People don't tend to come hang out with us. But despite our ruse of our very organized club, you may have got a peek into today. We're just average students, and I don't know. We're not scary. Please come hang out with us.
Very average students. Yeah, so we will be meeting next week, but it'll largely just be a hangout, and we'll go over the election results and maybe just hanging out. It can just be sitting in a voice chat and talking to each other, venting over how the year's gone and how classes are going right now. But otherwise, yeah, we'll see people next week. Thanks for taking part in the AGM and our last workshop.
All right, thank you.
All right, night everyone.